Dr. Shariq Siddiqu. So Dr. Siddiqui is an assistant professor of philanthropic studies and a director of the Muslim Philanthropy Initiative at the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. He is the author of 5 books, and his research focuses on Muslims in the United States. He serves as the editor-in-chief of 2 Indiana University journals, Journal on Muslim Philanthropy and Civil Society, and Muslim Humanitarianism Review. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Siddiqui.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here. I want to thank the organizers, in particular Dr. Ma'in and Dr. Kabir and Guidance College for having me here today, and just really inspired by all the presentations and conversations today. What I'd like to do today is continue the conversation that 2 of my colleagues and fellow scholars at Indiana University did by talking about Muslim American giving and specifically empirical data on Muslims in the United States. Now, this data is a representative sample of American Muslims. We're in our 5th year of doing this research. We do an annual poll. The polling company that collects this data is called SSRS. It's also known as, it's the company that CNN uses for its polling. But more importantly, from our perspective, it's the company that ISPU uses for the American Muslim poll. So I always say this research is the Sadaqah Jariyah of ISPU, because they train the polling company on how to collect data from this very small community called the American Muslims. It's a data sample which has roughly 1,500 general population, representative sample, and 1,000 American Muslims, and then we have subsamples of other minority communities. Okay, just a little bit. For the last 50 years, Indiana University has published something called Giving USA. This is something that you've seen every year. You'll see a news report saying Americans have given this much money. That's our study. And in essence, last year in 2023, Americans gave around $557 billion. And what's interesting is 67% of that came from people. 19% came from foundations. People passed away and left behind $42 billion. So 8% comes from individuals who passed away, and 7% comes from corporations. Now, what's interesting is that the largest recipient of giving in the United States is what says religion, actually should say houses of worship. So houses of worships, churches, synagogues, etc., are the largest recipient of that giving, followed by human services and education, then money that people gave to grant-making associations. So for example, when Bill Gates gave a ton of money to his foundation, that would be here, and so on. And if you look at it, only, 5% of American giving goes outside of the country. 95% of American giving stays in the United States. One interesting thing I want to share is in 2023, it was the first time in 40, 50 years of us collecting this data where the United States was not in an economic recession. The stock market was not down, but giving declined. And it's the first time in history that that's happened, where all the economic indicators are opposite to how giving happens. And we're still hypothesizing why that may be the case. Okay, so I just wanted to give you that large piece of around 300+ million people. And now I'm going to focus on a very small group of people, 1.1% of the population. Now, one of the interesting things is that 4 or 5 years ago, when we started doing this research, there's a bunch of mythology that I would hear in our community. Myth number 1, American Muslims are not generous. We're miserly, we just don't give a lot. Myth number 2, Muslims give, but all their money goes overseas. All the money is going, American Muslims don't care about the United States. All their money goes overseas. Myth number 3, American Muslims give, but they're only interested in civil rights. They're only interested in civil rights. Myth number 4, American Muslims give, but they only give to Muslim-led causes. And myth number 5, American Muslims give, but largely to build masjids. Right? And so when we went into this piece, we're trying to think about what of this is true and what isn't. And what we found, to start off with, and my colleagues and brothers have already shared, American Muslims are pretty small, 3.45 million people. Half born in the United States, only 14% are not citizens. This is based on the Pew data. And Pew's in the process of doing a multi-level study in a couple of years, and this number will be updated, but this is the most recent one. And according to ISPU, right, we're amongst the most highly diverse community in the religious community in the United States. We consist of Black people, Arabs, Asian, white people, Hispanics, but no one group makes up a majority. And interestingly enough, we're one of the youngest faith communities in the United States. And we are the poorest faith community in the United States. But what's interesting is that American Muslims give more than the general population. In fact, I think I missed a slide, but American Muslims give on average $4.3 billion to charity. American Muslims give $4.3 billion to charity, of which $1.8 billion is zakat. Which, if you think about a proportion of individual giving, American Muslims are only 1.1% of the population, but actually give 1.4% of giving. Which means that despite being young and poor, American Muslims actually are giving more than their fair share to the economy. And what we feel, and Muslims in the United States have a broader definition of philanthropy than the general population. So as you know, philanthropy is largely considered to be voluntary action for public good, which in the past has been largely translated into giving money, time, and talent, right? But American Muslims think about things like smiling, things like intention, things like advocating for things that are, or not doing. And what's interesting is if you look at the data, American Muslims for sure, if you test that hadith, this is an empirical testing of hadith, but the general population may not be as broad, and not as many people, but there are a number of people within the general population that share some of those ideas, right? So what are the top reasons for giving by American Muslims? Compassion. They want to be agents of change. Religiosity, right? Because American Muslims trust the nonprofit sector. They have a positive image of the sector, right? And American Muslims believe it's their civic responsibility to give. Okay. So you remember I said there were these 5 myths about American Muslim giving, right? $4.3 billion given away. What's interesting is only 17% of Muslim giving goes outside of the United States. 83% of giving stays in the United States. And if you look at what's the most important causes to Muslim American giving, it's domestic poverty relief, followed with global poverty relief, then houses of worship, and civil rights, despite Islamophobia and all the challenges, is not in the top of its giving. And this is overall giving at 4.3. But one of the things we also found is that American Muslims, you remember I gave you that other myth that American Muslims only give to Muslim organizations, right? And most Muslim organizations wish that was true, but it's not. 56% of giving goes to Muslim-led causes. 44% of giving goes to non-Muslim-led causes. So organizations like ACLU or the American Red Cross or University of Houston, hopefully Indiana University where I work, right? We're all examples of non-Muslim-led causes that are beneficiaries of giving. So another myth about American Muslims, The first myth was all the money goes overseas. Not true. Second myth, American Muslims only give to Muslims. Not true. Muslims are highly pluralistic in their giving. Then if you think about that 56%, if you carve that 56% out, how does that go? So top recipient is the masjid, either building it or funding it, 24%. The second amount is domestic poverty relief. Then comes international relief, organizations like Islamic Relief, Helping Hand, Zakat Foundation for America, etc. And then you'll have others. Still, civil rights is lower down on the numbers. In fact, if you look at civil rights, environment, and youth and family and research, they're pretty similar, right? Civil rights is just as important as research on Muslims. It's just as important as youth, and it's just as important as environment, right? Think about the differentiation between that number and domestic poverty relief and houses of worship. Another interesting thing, even though American Muslims' top recipient of their Muslim-led causes are masjids, Muslims give less to houses of worship than any other faith community in the United States. When you look at, so this is Muslim giving. This is giving by Muslims to Muslim-led causes. This is giving by Muslims to non-Muslim-led causes. And what's interesting is it's exactly the same with the exception of what? Yeah, there are no non-Muslim houses of worship. There are no non-Muslim masjids, right? Masjids by definition are Muslim-led, right? Not yet, but right now we don't have them. But everything else looks exactly the same, right? One of the interesting things is that Muslims in the United States largely give smaller amounts of money. And when I do fundraising trainings all across the country, this is most of your donors are going to be giving around the $10,000 mark at it's a very exceptional American Muslim donor that will give high level amounts of donations. This is another interesting slide. Far too often when we think about zakat, we're always thinking about people over the ages of 55. If you're not focusing on people between the ages of 40 and 49, 50 and 54, and 30 and 39, you're overlooking really important philanthropists in our community. And what I would argue, there's this new category of donor that's coming up, which is the 25 to 29. I'm a father and I'm a grandfather, I have 4 children. And what I'll tell you is, as much as, your kids grow up, you pay for their education, right? And then they get really cushy jobs. My oldest daughters, we were just talking to her and her husband yesterday. She and her husband in their first job make more money than my wife and I make at this point in my life. So our children are wealthier than we are, right? And many of them are living at home and expect us to pay for their cell phone plan. I still pay for all my children's cell phone plan, and they're all on my car insurance. And they haven't bought new cars yet, so we're still stuck with the old ones. So there's this whole new category of donors. If you're not looking out, 25 to 29, create programs for them. Okay, another interesting thing. Ramadan is clearly very important to Muslim giving. But what's interesting is, so is the rest of the year. 69% of the people said they always give during Ramadan. So if you're not raising money in Ramadan, you're losing out of 69% of it. But look at the other numbers. Dhul Hijjah, 45%, 45.2. End of the year, December, 45.2. It's when Americans give. It's usually at the end of the year. And then throughout the year, 47.3. What does this suggest? This suggests that American Muslims do give during Ramadan. Ramadan is very important, but so is every single other month of the year. Okay. This is this is this whole question within Islamic theology, whether zakat is a tax or is it a charity and philanthropy. And what we found is that in the United States, American Muslims think of zakat as a charity, not as a tax or philanthropy. And what do we differentiate? How do we differentiate this? Charity is feeding someone for immediate need. Philanthropy is you solve the root cause of that problem, right? And so what this is suggesting is that American Muslims believe that zakat is meant for emergent needs, not for systemic solutions, right? And there's this a larger conversation that we're trying to have about what that means and what does that mean in terms of donor education and so on. Because zakat has traditionally been a macroeconomic solution during the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, right? It was part of Baitul Mal. But over time, over 1400 years, it's changed from being a macroeconomic to a microeconomic solution. Okay, another piece, and this is another interesting thing, when we ask them about, are you eligible to pay zakat, or do you, on your wealth or your income, what I think is interesting is that nearly 1 in 5 said they didn't know. This suggests greater level of zakat literacy is needed within our community. We need to educate more of the Muslim community about what zakat is, what it can be paid on, and and how it can be used. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to run through these last few slides. Okay, and then this is about donor loyalty. What this suggests is nearly a third of donors will be loyal and will consistently give to the same individuals and same organizations. Another third will consider it, whereas a third will say no. And I think this suggests more effort on the part of us as fundraisers to sort of create the system so that we can create donor loyalty, so that we can have that 80 to 90% retention rate within giving within our community, within our organization. Talks about the need for better donor stewardship. And for those of you, in all these things, we have 3, 4, and 5-day courses that you can take to help you with some of these techniques. Okay, this goes in talks about what are important, and clearly, as I've said earlier, people are more interested in emergent needs, so hunger alleviation, whereas if you think about advocacy, it's all the way at the other end, right? So things like systemic solutions or long-term solutions are of lower priority, but not as low as one would think. So what this number suggests on advocacy and economic empowerment, long-term development, is if the number was much lower, it was like 1 or 2, right? That would mean they're not interested in this. This one, they're saying we're interested in it, but we feel that there's more need on the emergent side. So what this suggests is that if you need zakat for advocacy, if you need zakat for macroeconomic solutions, American Muslims are interested in it, but we have to show them how that's going to solve the larger problem so that there won't be as much emergent need. So that this number suggests that there's a possibility of persuasion within American Muslims when it comes to this kind of stuff. Okay. And then this just says, how do they give? And what I think is interesting here is that Muslim Americans, if you looked at remittances data in 2001, of the top 10 countries that received remittances from the United States, 7 were Muslim majority countries. In 2002, it was 0. And so remittances really declined. And what this is showing is that there's this remittances is coming back. So there's greater trust within the Muslim philanthropic market for in terms of giving money overseas. The other interesting one is government, right? And we're still trying to figure out what does that mean. Some people define that based on our focus group interviews, that look, when I pay my federal taxes, that's the equivalent of me paying my zakat. Some say, I have assets sitting in Pakistan and the government in Pakistan automatically taxes that from zakat, so I pay that. And some say, I give my money through government-sponsored programs. So for example, Imran Khan, when he was prime minister, he wanted to launch this scheme about collecting zakat to build a hydroelectric dam, part of his Naya Pakistan. So some of it is that. So it's a mix of those kinds of things. Sorry. Okay, so one thing I was going to share is that we have around 8 reports, which has all of our empirical findings on our website. They're downloadable. They're easily available on zakat. We have a couple of reports on zakat. We have a couple of reports on Muslim giving. We have reports on women. We have on timing of giving and so on. And so please feel free to email me and I'm happy to point to you, but they're all open access. They're all freely available. Of the 5 books, 3 of them will be open access within the next month, so don't buy them yet. Just go to our website. They'll be available as long as you're willing to read them on PDF or Kindle, so you'll have those available as well. Is that good? I just want to thank you all for your patience. I want to thank my team at Indiana University Lilly School of Philanthropy and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the good that comes out of this presentation. And I want to apologize to my team and to all of you for the weaknesses in the presentation. Those were all mine. So I hope you'll forgive me. May Allah bless you all, and I hope you have a wonderful conference. Assalamu alaikum.